Mr. Speaker, with permission, I will make a statement about the ambitions of a global Britain and the lessons of the COVID-19 pandemic. We're living through a daily demonstration of how events on the far side of the world influence not only British security and prosperity, but something as elemental as the state of our health and whether we can go to work, go shopping. This crisis offers vivid proof of the seminal importance of international engagement and exactly why our country must perform its global role. I've begun the biggest review of our foreign defence and development policy since the end of the Cold War, designed to maximise our influence and integrate all the strands of our international effort. And the overriding aim is to bring this country's strengths and expertise to bear on the world's biggest problems, seizing the opportunities of Britain's presidency of the G7 next year and the UN Climate Change Conference, the COP26, which we will host in Glasgow. The UK possesses the third biggest aid budget and diplomatic network in the world, and we owe it to our people to make best use of these assets which scarcely any of our peers can match. The British taxpayer has a right to expect that we will achieve the maximum value for every pound that we spend. And one cardinal lesson of the pandemic is that distinctions between diplomacy and overseas development are artificial and outdated. For instance, to protect ourselves against another calamity, the UK will need to work alongside our friends to strengthen international bodies like the World Health Organization and help vulnerable countries to improve their health systems and achieve greater resilience. It makes no sense to ask whether this amounts to aid or foreign policy. They're one and the same endeavour, and they're designed to achieve the same goals, which are right in themselves and serve our national interest. On the 4th of June, I chaired a virtual summit of the Global Vaccine Alliance, which raised enough money to immunise 300 million children. I doubt whether any other occasion will save more lives and avoid more suffering or produce a better example of the good this country can do by its international engagement in the true and broad sense alongside our friends. And yet today, as anybody who has any experience of the matter will know, a dividing line between aid and foreign policy runs through our whole system, with our Department for International Development working independently from the Foreign and Commonwealth Office, and our aid budget parcelled out between different arms of Whitehall. DFID outspends the Foreign Office more than 4 times over, and yet no single decision-maker in either department is able to unite our efforts or take a comprehensive overview. We give as much aid to Zambia as we do to Ukraine, though the latter is vital for European security. We give 10 times as much aid to Tanzania as we do to the 6 countries of the Western Balkans, who are acutely vulnerable to Russian meddling. And regardless of the merits of these decisions, no single department is currently empowered to judge whether they make sense or not. No single department is empowered to judge whether they make sense or not. And so we tolerate an inherent risk of our left and right hands working independently. Faced with this crisis today and the opportunities that lie ahead, we have a responsibility to ask whether our current arrangements, dating back to 1997, still maximise British influence. Those well-intentioned decisions of 23 years ago were right for their time. They paved the way for Britain to meet the UN target of spending 0.7% of national income on aid, a goal that was achieved by the coalition government in 2013 and has been maintained. They went silent at that bit, didn't they? And has been maintained ever since, including this year, and which remains our commitment. Yet those judgments date from a relatively benign era when China's economy was still much smaller than Italy's, and the West was buoyed by victory in the Cold War. We must now strengthen our position in an intensely competitive world by making sensible changes. And so I have decided to merge DFID with the Foreign and Commonwealth Office, to create a new department, the Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office. And this will unite our aid with our diplomacy and bring them together in our international effort. DFID has amassed world-class expertise, and all of its people can take pride in how they have helped to transform the lives of hundreds of millions of people across the world. To select but a few examples, they have striven to protect millions of children across the world from polio, which is now on the verge of global eradication. They have paved the way for millions of girls to attend school for the first time in countries such as Pakistan, as I've seen for myself. They've done their utmost to ease the suffering in Syria, and in Sierra Leone they were central to the defeat of an outbreak of the Ebola virus. And all of this amounts to the finest demonstration of British values, following in the great tradition of the country that ended the slave trade and resisted totalitarianism. And it's precisely that ambition, vision and expertise that will now be at the heart of a new department, taking forward the work of UK aid to reduce poverty, and that will remain central to our mission. The Foreign Secretary will be empowered to decide which countries receive or cease to receive British aid, while delivering a single UK strategy for each country, overseen by the National Security Council, which I chair. Those strategies will be implemented on the ground by the relevant ambassador, the relevant UK ambassador, who will lead all of the government's work in the host country. And in this, we are following the examples of Australia, Canada and New Zealand, all of whom run their development programmes from their foreign ministries. And we will align other British assets overseas, including our trade commissioners, who will come under the authority of the UK ambassador, bringing more coherence to our international presence. Now, amid this pandemic, this House may ask whether this is the right moment to reorganise Whitehall, but I must say that in reality this crisis has already imposed fundamental changes on the way that we operate. And if there is one further lesson, it is that a whole-of-government approach, getting maximum value for the British taxpayer, is just as important abroad as it is at home. And so this is exactly the moment when we must mobilise every one of our national assets, including our aid budget and expertise, to safeguard British interests and values overseas. And the best possible instrument for doing that will be a new department charged with using all the tools of British influence to seize the opportunities ahead. And, Mr. Speaker, I therefore commend this statement to the House.
I now call the Leader of the Opposition, Keir Starmer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I thank the Prime Minister for early sight of his statement and for the telephone call we had earlier today. As the Prime Minister has noted, today is the 4th anniversary of the tragic murder of our friend and colleague Jo Cox. And I don't need to remind the House of Jo's commitment and dedication to international aid, how highly she valued DFID as a power for good. And I'm sure the whole House will want to send best wishes to Jo's friends and family on this difficult day. Can I also join the Prime Minister in sending our heartfelt best wishes to the honourable member for East Dunbartonshire, to her friends, to her family and to her colleagues here and in Scotland. It must be very distressing. Mr. Speaker, we should see this statement for what it is: the tactics of pure distraction. Jo Cox would have seen right through this. A few hours ago, the ONS figures showed a fall of 600,000 people on the payroll. The economy contracted by 20% in April. And we could be on the verge of a return to mass unemployment, something we've not seen for a generation. We've also one of the highest death tolls from COVID-19 in the world. At least 41,700 deaths, and likely to be far greater than that. And in the last hour, the government has U-turned on free school meals. can I put on record my thanks to Marcus Rashford for the part that he has played on this issue and the victory for the 1.3 million children affected. Mr. Speaker, this statement is intended to deflect attention from all of that. And can I assure the Prime Minister it will not work? The Prime Minister spoke about global Britain. I want to take that head on. I passionately believe in Britain. I'm proud of this country. I want to see it playing a leading global role again, a role we frankly haven't played in the last decade. I want to see Britain as a moral force for good in the world, a force for global justice and cooperation, leading the world on global security, leading the global search for a vaccine, leading the global fight against poverty, climate change and gender inequality. We don't achieve that by abolishing one of the best performing and most important departments. A department that's done so much to tackle poverty and injustice. Labour created DFID, and I'm proud of that. And until now, there's been a cross-party consensus about DFID. As the Right Honourable Member for Sutton Coldfield, the former Secretary of State for International Development, said last year, DFID is the most effective and respected engine of development anywhere in the world and a huge soft power asset for Britain. Today, he said, in relation to the Prime Minister's announcement, that it would, in his words, at a stroke, destroy a key aspect of global Britain. His words. I myself have worked with both the FCO and DFID across the world on rule of law projects and anti-corruption projects. I've seen firsthand the value of its work globally. The Prime Minister says the 0.7% will not be eroded. He will understand our scepticism. So can he confirm, will the full DFID budget be ring-fenced in the new department? Will there be no loss of DFID staff numbers and expertise? And how much will this reorganisation cost in the middle of this crisis? Mr. Speaker, abolishing DFID diminishes Britain's place in the world. There is no rationale for making this statement today. The Prime Minister should stop these distractions and get on with the job of tackling the health and economic crisis we currently face. Thank you.
Minister.
Well, Mr. Speaker, if the right honourable gentleman does not want a statement in the House about an important Whitehall reform, then I think he misrepresents the views of the House. It's very, very important that we should make these statements, and I'm very proud of what we are doing. Anybody who has any experience of the matter will know that at the moment, UK overseas does not. We are less than the sum of our parts. And if you travel to important foreign capitals where we need to make points to our friends and partners, you have UK diplomats saying one thing and then finding that their message is the message from overseas aid, from UK aid, from DFID is different. And that undermines the coherence. That undermines the coherence of our foreign policy, and he will know that very well. It is absolutely vital that we have a coherent, joined-up message for our international partners, and we speak with one voice. And at a time when the UK is spending £15 billion on overseas aid, 0.7% of our GDP, I think the British people will want to know what we're doing right now to make that spending more efficient. And they will want to know what we're doing to ensure that the UK is supporting the campaign to develop a vaccine against coronavirus. And I'm very proud of what the UK is doing. I think it's fantastic that we secured $8.8 billion at the recent summit to develop a vaccine. And I'm very proud of the work that DFID is doing. And yes, of course, we will make sure that we guarantee the DFID budget. But what will happen within the new department? But what will happen now is that every single person working in that department, in the new Whitehall Super Department, the Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office, every person in that department will now have all the idealism and sense of mission that comes from DFID, but also the understanding of the need to project UK values, UK policies and UK interests overseas. This is a long overdue reform, and he should